Salam, Hawra.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Salim, how are you?
I'm good. It's funny. I always find myself laughing at the beginning when I say salam. I don't know why.
A smile is heard through the voice.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today. I think I should probably shout out my wife at the beginning of this episode for making this podcast actually happen, because for a while she sent me posts of yours and she was like, oh, Hawra's doing really amazing stuff, you should get her on, you should talk to her, because you guys went to school together.
Yes, we did.
And then one day I finally said, all right, fine, like let me see,
let me look at her,
let me actually look at what you're talking about. And she was right. You're doing amazing things, and like your story I think is very unique and quite inspirational. If I do, I mean, picking it up now, you have to live up to the hype.
I'll try.
But yeah, I think, looking at the tech space broadly, there's a lot of things and a lot of stereotypes, and also it's relatively new.
Yes.
So this is not something that our parents' generation could really get into when they had the job market in front of them and whatever else. But I think the best place to start with yourself is probably that wonderful story that you once told on a video, which I saw was about your early days of how you found an interest in this whole space.
Yeah, thank you.
So over to you.
Firstly, thank you for having me, and thank you to your wife for shouting me out. Really, those pictures are just of me going to tech companies outside and taking pictures going, yo, I'm here. Yeah, no, it's been an exciting journey. At first, I just thought I'm doing me, and then everyone asked me to kind of share the story, share the pictures, even though they're not in tech, but it seems to have excited them and brought them towards this field.
Yeah.
With your question regarding, how I started, it was my brothers are software and network engineers, and I started, looking at computers coming in when I was 6, 7, 8. But obviously, then computers weren't really in the homes. Internet still hadn't established. You can tell how old I am through that. It was a completely different era. So I just watch from afar what they're doing with the computers, the way they were typing on keyboards, the way they were connecting wires. And I just felt this spark inside me. I'm just like, I really want to know how these work. What's happening when that, when you're clicking on that keyboard, what's happening with that computer? But I still wasn't allowed to touch them. I wasn't allowed to go into the computer room. These were expensive devices that were, being operated on. So I did sneak in a couple of times, I'm admitting this, and just start typing on the computer and see what it does. One day I did realize, and that's a story that you're talking about, I did realize that the keyboard was quite dirty. I thought, okay, what's happening here? Let's just give it a clean. It was around 9 then, so got hold of the keyboard, disconnected it, took it under the tap, and just started washing it and going, oh, this is really
wow,
this is really cool, let's clean this.
I can imagine your brothers were thrilled at that.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about the consequences of the keyboard. Alhamdulillah, that it was just the keyboard and no other parts were taken. Another story that I've never actually spoken about but just came to me when I was around 16. I ended up having my own computer, alhamdulillah, to work on for homework. And one day I just woke up and found this little switch embedded in the case. So the way I was sleeping, the back of the computer was towards my head, and I saw this little switch embedded in the case. I'm like, oh, what does this button do? Do you remember Dexter's Lab at all?
Yeah.
So he used to be like, oh, what does this button do? His sister used to do that to his lab. So I looked and I'm like, oh, what does this button do? And I pressed it, and I basically burnt my motherboard by messing around with that switch.
Are you serious?
I messed up my computer. I messed up many computers.
Wow. But that's because it's interesting. Like when I think back of my sort of time, early days with computers, I remember like to access games, there was like a black screen, and you had to like type in a bunch of codes.
Yeah,
I felt like a coder back then.
That was the command line.
Yeah, the command line.
EXE probably, and then DIR to find the directory, and then you'd find those games and click. So
I think what's really interesting actually is that computers, and again, I think we're probably around a similar age, but computers when we were growing up were a lot more complex, I think, than they are now.
Absolutely.
In the sense that I remember deleting the sound drive on my computer
very easily.
You say that, but it's crazy. So like, imagine I was listening to audio and then suddenly I couldn't listen to audio anymore. And then I had to like find out how to reinstall the sound driver. And it's crazy. But I think what's interesting then is that our journeys seem to converge quite a lot. No, converge is the wrong word. The opposite. Diverge, whatever. Yeah. We went in different directions. So I am a casual user of computers, whereas you kind of went in the deep end.
Yeah.
So what happened from there?
After that, I kind of realized that and I'd like to then come back to this part of the conversation and why children now don't have the exact same skills that we used to do in our age and time, and that's the reason. You know, we can talk about that later. But what happened after that was I became really interested in teaching other people how to break computers and put them together. So I got married and went to Iraq.
Yeah.
Stayed there for a few years, and I realized that one thing that I really wanted to do was teach other women how to take these computers apart. So they were asking me, you know, very basic questions about computers that were quite difficult for them, regardless of their backgrounds. They were just really interested in how computers were making a difference in their lives. And so I started showing, you know, they'd say, oh, can you help me change the battery in the laptop? Or can we upgrade the RAM? Or really basic stuff, you know, for me, because I've done it. Because of how many times I've broken computers.
Yeah.
And for them, it was fascinating. They'd be like, oh, so what are you doing there? And I thought, okay, so if you're interested, let's gather around and let me teach you how to break computers. I can't, you know, guarantee that we can put them back together working. But then that taught me a whole kind of problem-solving process. How do I solve these different issues, especially in a place in Iraq where even in 2005, 2006, Wi-Fi was not available. It wasn't widely available in the home, so you had to have an Ethernet cable. Sometimes you had to go to an internet cafe to find the solutions. Now, in a conservative city such as Najaf, where I was, internet cafes were only for men. It's not accessible to women, and that's, inshallah, we'll talk about that later on as well. So I'd have to find at specific times when my husband's back from work, and he can come with me and sit with me in the internet cafe, and that's the only time I can use the computer. So that was a whole new world where, you know, firstly in the UK there was already a level kind of acceptance that you, as a woman, you're using a computer, that's fine. You don't usually break them. But then in Iraq, where in a place where you know, women are trying to learn, but there isn't a safe space for them to expand on their knowledge in this area.
It's interesting that you say that, but I was saying to you just before we started recording that on the radio they were talking about gaming because the PS5 has just come out, and you know they're looking at the industry and everything else. And for a long time, those kind of age-old stereotypes of teenage, you know, pre or just post-pubescent boy with spots all over his face in like a dark, poorly lit room, just typing away on a computer was the kind of archetype of a techie or a gamer. Yeah, and that's now slowly, but it's finally moved. So it's interesting that, you know, you talk about the kind of level of tolerance within the UK. There is obviously, you know, we have that kind of luxury of, yes, a man and a woman can do exactly the same thing. There's no issue there.
Yes.
But there are still, interestingly, cultural stereotypes that do exist. And again, you know, we are going to talk about the experience that you've had from all of this. But I think it's interesting that for me, it almost seems like, at least in places like Iraq, it's a lot more overt, maybe, or in conservative cities like Najaf, it's probably a lot more overt in terms of a woman. They will say a woman can't do this, or it's not. You know, you'll get the looks
suitable.
Yeah, but I still feel like even here there is a glass ceiling when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
And also, just to kind of contextualize everything that you were doing in Najaf with teaching women about computers and whatever else, at this point you still had no qualifications other than breaking a bunch of computers.
None. Yeah. So self-taught, we call it now.
Yeah, self-taught, right? That's it.
And even later on when I was studying, you know, I'd bring books with me because I was there for my husband's work, and I'd bring books with me from the UK to learn about certain certifications. And when I'd read about them, I'll be like, oh, okay, I've done that. Yeah, that goes without saying. And I didn't realize that it goes without saying for me because I've already done it enough times. I haven't learnt through theoretical kind of official education.
Yeah.
So when I did come back, however, that did hold me back in a sense because we're still in a society where a degree really defines what you can and can't do, what field you're in. Although now, and in 2020, the biggest tech giants have decided that you don't need a computer science degree to be, a proficient in your job. However, we're still in some fields focusing on a degree. And that's even more prevalent in places like Iraq, where when I was applying for jobs, and this sounds very odd, but it's true, any kind of job I'd apply for, they'd be like, where's your degree? And I'd look and I think, not being arrogant, but I have so much experience. Yeah. I've learned so much. I've gained so much from this different culture and everything that I'm bringing to the table. Yet you're still looking for that piece of paper to prove that I'm capable. So when I did, that was still on my mind. I still wanted to do my degree. I just didn't think that it should define my entire life. So when I did come back to the UK, my friends had all graduated and they'd all gotten their degrees and moved on. So that kind of made me feel like, where am I in this world? I didn't have this level of confidence to be like, you can do a degree at whatever age you're at. So I went ahead and did my degree in computer science, focusing on software engineering, and then that's when I moved from hardware engineering to software engineering, writing code. But again, all of a sudden I found myself in a theater of 200 gentlemen, being the only woman doing this degree. And I thought, oh, okay. So I was in Iraq thinking that I don't have a place in tech as a woman, but now here in the UK, in a very good university, where are the women? There were 2 other women who started the degree, but a month later they've left. And they just felt like...
So it was literally you and...
Me and 200 guys. And I thought, okay.
That's crazy.
So do I belong? That question kept coming up. Do I belong in this society that I grew up in? Yet now I've got different cultures coming in, and where do I find myself here?
And I think that with this kind of stuff, and this is like a very broad thing, and I've experienced a similar thing in terms of, I did a degree that was a little bit out there at university as well, and the community response and the family response always has a big part to play in terms of like, what will people say and whatever else.
What will people say?
What was that like for you on a family, but then also a community level? Because I can't imagine, like, I mean, if you're one of 200, you're one woman amongst 200 guys in a sort of mainstream setting, within the community, that's like one within 6,000, 7, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine many other people got into that. Yeah. So what was that all like?
So first question, with regards to family, they've been extremely supportive all the way. Like,
there was never like your parents were like,
ever.
Really?
They're just like, is this, if this is what you've been breaking computers since you were a kid. We've been trying to keep you away from the computer room, right? All you've done is whinge at us to get you a computer all your life. So they were all, that's something they grew up with. Like, it's I grew up with, and it was accepted. It was celebrated. Hawra, you're into computers. My sister, one of my sisters, whenever she was asked, because most of my family are kind of into literature, philosophy, theology. Yeah. So being the youngest, you're just like, yeah, I'm a rebel. But in reality, I was just following my passion. So one of my sisters, when she was asked, so what's your sister doing as a degree? She'd be like, computer, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's all that mattered to her. It wasn't something that was understood. So even when people would ask me, so Hawra, what are you doing for your degree? And I'd be so excited telling them about the latest virtual reality, and you'd see like they'd zone out and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm really happy for you. Yeah. And in their mind, they're probably thinking, just stop talking. We're not interested in this. But in reality, what I was trying to bring forward was, listen, in a few years' time, coding, reading and writing code is just going to be like reading and writing English. If you don't have this skill, you are going to fall behind. And we don't want our children to fall behind, and we shouldn't have women falling behind. Whether you're a surgeon, so many surgeons are now dependent on robots. So who's going to be training these robots? So many jobs will be replaced by tech. So why are we not learning, why are we not catching up quickly?
Could you see all of this back then?
No, I was following my passion.
Ah, you got lucky.
I was just
My passion took me to like ancient Greek literature, which has done nothing.
I was actually just going to ask
Yeah,
you,
it
what
was
your
interesting.
degree?
But this is the thing. Like, I had to construct a response for people when they ask what I'm doing at university.
Yeah,
You can't tell.
say my
Classical studies was the degree title, but then the first question was classical music.
Oh, what's
I'm
that?
like, no, not classical music. And then I would tell them, it's ancient Greek literature, language, philosophy. And they'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know philosophy
Good
at
for
university, but I had to tell them that because they link it to Plato and everything else.
That's it.
But as I said, you got lucky that your degree became the future and mine was literally the ancient past.
But there's
and it
always a
stayed
place
there.
for it, yeah. But a lot of these concepts are used in computing and algorithms and machine learning. So
But the thing is, for me, like I know we're here talking about yourself and your journey, but
no, it's a conversation.
the interesting thing is that I knew at university I wanted to benefit from the skills, the soft skills that you get. So time management, working on projects, writing essays, research, all of these skills, they're transferable skills in everything that you do.
Absolutely, especially the amount of writing you do. I guess
it,
in
right?
that degree.
And I always knew, I knew one thing, and that was that I had no clue what I was going to do after university. So if you're not going to become a doctor or a dentist or a pharmacist or an engineer,
what are you doing in life?
But you can do anything. That's the benefit. You can literally follow your passion, make sure you get a good grade, and then the job market is open. Because as you said, people aren't necessarily always now looking for a specific degree in something.
Yeah, especially in tech. Everyone has, people are coming from such various backgrounds.
Yeah, so I think it's fascinating. Like, whenever I meet someone who's done like a bit of an out there degree, the experience is always very similar. So you spoke about your family. In terms of the community, what were you said? Friends would kind of have that blank expression, but did your parents get any kind of pushback from people? Was there any of that kind of, why are you letting her do that?
Yeah, a little bit, but my husband, I think, took the brunt the most of this because I did get married at a young age, and so he was supporting me in my journey, but also he's an Iraqi man and he's come from Iraq, and it's like why are you letting your wife be so free? Why are you allowing her to do this stuff? Like, you know how much she's mixing with men? Do you know how, do you know where she's going to these events? And alhamdulillah that he was a supportive husband and would, keep people quiet and tell them, obviously, it's nothing to do with them. Yeah. But he did get it. I mean, he did get a lot of it. And as well as my family, so Hawra, the tomboy, is now all grown up and she's still in a men's field. Like, what's happening there? What's wrong with her? I did get backlash from some of the elders in the community who would literally message me after I've put an Instagram post after a long day of being at events and be like, oh, so this is the daughter of an Ayatollah? This is this is how a Muslim woman should be in the world of computing. Yeah. You should be teaching girls Quran. Why are you teaching them about tech? Why are you bringing our daughters together and gathering them, telling them they have a place in tech? Why are you not teaching them about Islam and how to practice their religion really well? So I think took that field and just kind of... It
is interesting, and I guess also relevant to an extent that you do come from a religious family, as you mentioned. Your father is an Ayatollah in the sort of Shia community, and I think that's also quite significant, but I think also positive in terms of, like you said, you're having the support of your family and not conforming, because there is always this notion and this feeling that like the more religious I've got to do that thing religious that you get, or that your family is, or the status is, that women should be silent, should be marginalized, should be sidelined, shouldn't be seen mixing with men, working in male environments and whatever else. But you've just gone out there and done all of that.
Absolutely. And it didn't come without its fears. Like, I'm a firm believer that, and my hashtag is always keeping it real. It didn't start off like this. I did start off as an introvert, in university, I never had these connections or conversations with men at all. I just thought, okay, I'm a woman and this is what my society has taught me and this is what my conservative family would expect of me. But I feel like I was putting these barriers in front of myself before anyone else did. And even the naysayers and people who are coming to, criticize this work, they just wanted to throw their comments out there. They're not living my life at the end of the day, are they?
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, so I'm here. I can be in my full hijab and I can be, following my religion, and I can be from a conservative family, and I can be all of those, and I can be a wife and a mother and a sister and a daughter, yet still follow my passion without, crossing any lines, let's say, or any, having any religious issues. So a lot of issues will come up. And they do come up, and they have been challenges with regards to, for example, dealing with men, shaking hands, all of that. So we can talk about that at a later stage if you like.
And I think that's like your standard Muslim in the workplace stuff.
Absolutely. It's not only in tech.
Yeah.
So how long are we going to be sitting at home and not doing any? Or if we do, I mean, tech is the best thing. If you decide to be at home, you can be working as a software engineer because you never have to see people ever again. You need a stable internet connection, a computer, and sit at home. But for me, I had that energy and I wanted to interact and I wanted women's voices to be heard. And when I'd go to events, I'd literally look and not a single hijabi woman. Like, what's happening there? Why are we not out there representing? If our voices are not heard, and if we don't represent, how are other people going to know what they need to do to make us feel included? So it's like, I don't feel included in this event, right? And I don't feel the diversity. But what am I doing about it? Should I be waiting for anyone else to be speaking up? Or should I be the one?
Well, I think a lot of people decide at that point, I'm just not going to turn up.
I'm not going to turn up.
Yeah,
and I did that.
Why would I go? If it's not for me, why would I be there? I think you mentioned, women's voices as well, specifically, and your masters, when you did your masters, you looked at that specifically. You wrote a paper on that. So what were the kind of findings? What were you looking at specifically, and then what did you find? Absolutely. I can't remember the title.
Yeah, can I just backtrack up?
Go for it.
What you mentioned last, that I just want to pick up on that because it really resonated with what you just said. You said I won't go. And I did that for several years throughout my degree. So when there were events, I'd go for the talk. And the moment they say networking, for me, I always say the N-word, literally. I would be out. I would be running as fast as I could out of that place. Like, do not talk to me, because I had this fear where I don't know what to say. Who's going to accept me as a Muslim woman in this place? I'm the only one here. Like, what will they understand? How am I going to have these conversations? Until I decided, and I'd go back home crying my eyes out because I'm like, I really wanted to learn. I really wanted to ask that person.
Like actually crying.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask that person those questions. Yeah. And that person was the one for me to ask. Yeah. Or some events I'd actually just end up going to different cities just to hear a specific speaker. And a lot of us do that with whichever field we're in. There are some distinguished speakers. And when networking time would come and there's an opportunity for me to ask the question, I would just stand there and be like, oh, no, I can't do this. I'm a Muslim woman, and what are they going to think? What am I going to have to deal with?
What was running through your head? Like, what was holding you back?
What am I going to do when they put their hand out to shake mine? What am I going to say? I don't want to shake your hand.
But that was it. That was the crippling fear.
One or two, different things. How am I? Where's this conversation going to take me? At the end of the day, our community is not going to be wanting to move forward with this field anyway. So what am I going to do with this information anyway? It's only going to be bettering myself. And then I thought, hold on, it is bettering myself, and then I can pass that on to. But at that time, when you don't have, did I just push the mic?
No, it's fine.
When you don't have that level of confidence that this is my journey, it's okay for me to feel comfortable or uncomfortable. I'm learning. Yeah. This isn't a failure. I'm just, moving forward with this. You just start becoming comfortable and embracing your whole self. Once you embrace your whole self, you realize, these are all just either barriers in my mind or society has put them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the one who's stopping me from moving forward in this field.
So I'm just trying to understand this form of mindset a little bit better, because you were already arguably trailblazing somewhat by following your passion and kind of saying, I don't care what the expectations are of me from a conservative cultural background, I'm gonna do this. I have my family support. You know, my husband's behind me is my number one support and everything else. But then, why didn't you fully commit? So what was stopping you? Why did you go halfway, kind of do the course, go to the events, and then chicken out at the last minute?
It was probably a lack of self-confidence, firstly. And as well, in addition to that, feeling that I don't belong. I don't have a place here. Because I'm so different.
The reason I'm asking is that everything that you've just said projects that self-confidence and that self-belief to pursue your passion.
Yeah.
But then you kind of stopped after 80%.
Absolutely, because you feel sometimes, well, I'm an introvert. I don't come across as being an introvert, but I am. And that I used to think, okay, so I can't have these conversations. You know, I'm going to put myself in a really uncomfortable spot. But I think through adulthood, we realize that these uncomfortable positions are the ones that teach us. And you have to put yourself out there and really make yourself uncomfortable to realize, oh, you know what, it wasn't that bad. Now, looking back, it was only 4 years ago that situations like this would happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I look at my notes and I laugh because I used to obviously I have to get it out there, you know, I used to write notes while I'm crying my eyes out. Like I just went up 80%, as you said, and then I just ruined it for myself. And then I just, you know, sat back and thought, if this is what I really want to do, then I need to move forward with it. I need to put myself in uncomfortable situations, have these conversations, and maybe I'll move forward. And I realized that actually, you know what, once I did it once, twice, 3 times, it became super easy, super straightforward. And a lot of the times I get questions, how do you do it? Like, how did you go up to that person and speak to them? Well, you know, they're a human. I'm a human.
Just go up to them and speak to them.
I've got to, they've got information that I need. And, you know, there are ways, you know, you end up learning how to speak to different people at different levels. So I really kind of expanded my knowledge and experience in that field by really working on myself. So that was quite a difficult part of my own journey. And this is, you know, personally, it was my issue, you know, being scared to talk to people up to that
point. I think,
but,
you know, the reason, like, obviously we are having a bit of quite a personal conversation today, because I think a lot of people struggle from very similar issues. And this is something I've always seen as well, that everyone looks at everybody else thinking that, oh, they've got their life together. They know what they're doing. They're so confident. They're so brave. And then when you hear someone and you sit down one-to-one and they're just like, I'm a mess. I don't know what I'm doing. But everyone thinks that about everybody else. But it's like only when you actually interact with someone do you kind of realize, actually, you know what, we're all exactly the same.
We are. And I really want to put that out there. And as I said, I always think about the idea of keeping it real. Because, you know, the same way I went to this event or got invited to Google, to San Francisco, they said, I don't feel like that's anything unique or that's anything special. Anyone can do it. Right? And so let's be real about the struggles. It sometimes is a very lonely journey. It sometimes is like, what am I doing here? You know, nobody else is following through. So many times I, you know, approach brilliant software engineers, you know, Muslim women, software engineers, or, you know, graphic designers, or, you know, women making a difference, who are super brilliant, 10 times better than I am. And when I'd approach and be like, can you come and speak at this event, or can you come and represent? They'd hold back. And so for me, it's always like, okay, so when is everyone else going to join me on this journey? Okay, when is everyone else going to be part of this? And it does, so there are little issues here and there. It's not all wow glamorous. You know, going to America on a 12-hour flight, going and coming back, and you've left your children, and, you know, you're just tired from having to speak at events and meet loads of people. So it comes with its struggles. But at the end of the day, once you've got that final goal in your mind, I think just go for it. Really.
I think that's actually another interesting point, because you mentioned, you know, family, leaving your kids and things like that. When it comes to representation, specifically for women, I feel like within Muslim spaces, women constantly, and men as well, constantly talk about representation of women. We need to be, or we want women to be visibly appreciated and represented in different fields and whatever else. But then on a practical level, there's always that thing of, I have a duty towards my family and I have kids. And if you don't have kids, you've got, well, you know,
you've got loads of other
responsibilities and things. But how how do you kind of reconcile that as well then? Because I think that's another thing that's important, because we always talk about, oh, we need more women representing. But then, and I've seen it as well, even on like a community level, where when you have a committee that you're putting together, for example, and so like take my local mosque committee, for example,
Yes.
they wanted equal representation of men and women on the as trustees. Yet when it came to it, they could only find 3 women and 10 guys.
Yeah.
And it's like and actively looking for women to step forward into these leadership positions, but then we don't have any women there who are willing to, because often it's like, I have to look after my family, I have this, I have that, whatever else. So how do we kind of navigate all of that?
By listening to them and providing that comfortable space. So I'm going to answer this question and the one that I kind of missed, the master's one, at the same time. So through my master's degree, which I did after a PGCE, because I wanted to learn, how to teach and teach girls computer science in schools. And that made me realize girls don't choose computer science as a subject. Yeah. And I thought, okay, let's find out what this is. I'm going to leave teaching for a while, go to do my master's. And that's when I focused on computing education and the gender issue. Why do we not have girls choosing computing, whether it's in the UK, Malaysia, Turkey, Iraq? So it was kind of an international study. And several issues came up, as being the reasons behind why women don't get into tech. One of them being self-efficacy. So women's self-belief that they are capable. I'd be teaching coding in a class, secondary school, and it was a mixed school, so I'd have the 2 or 3 girls who I've kind of pushed to take the subject. They'd be coding and creating a beautiful application or a beautiful website, and the code is perfect. And I'd go up to them and be like, okay, so what's it? And she's sitting there like really upset or crying, like, my website's ugly, my work isn't up to standard. And I'd look at the boys on the other side who were sitting
doing
like,
trash,
right across, literally,
but loving it.
He's like, oh, miss, look at my website, look at my app. And I'm just, obviously you don't want to break him, but you're just like, really, like that is a bunch of like rubbish that you've got there because it's not following any of the standards. But obviously I'm very proud of the fact that he's tried and, he's gone ahead and done something, which is amazing in itself. But then I've got the girls sitting here going, oh no, this is rubbish. And you think, okay, there's an issue here. If your work is so brilliant, yet you are not capable of seeing it, then this is a society issue. So how, as a society, are we making women feel supported and welcome? When I invite a woman who has duties as a wife, as a daughter, as a mother, am I providing her with someone who's going to, am I providing her with childcare? Am I taking away all these responsibilities and, I won't say burdens, but these mental loads that she's carrying because she feels responsible to make sure that her husband is looked after, her children are looked after. When I want her to attend this Open My Mosque initiative or any other initiative, is the husband saying, you know what, don't worry about me, I'm fully sorted? Are her children being looked after in a way where she feels comfortable and that she trusts whoever's looking after them? Am I providing her with some time to prepare her talk? Am I providing her with the support to say, you can do it, you're capable, you're amazing, and just a level of self-confidence? Am I instilling that in her? Or am I just saying, yeah, I'm supporting you, go for it? Whereas in reality, I'm just like chaining her hands and going, yeah, I'm supporting you, go for it. How am I supporting her? And that's when I come back and say my family have been super supportive, because I was like messaging my sisters. I have a podcast recording with the Muslim Vibe and they're super excited for me. I'm really excited. And without me having to speak up and say what's going to happen with the children, they're already offering, we're going to take care of them. What day is it? When is it? We're there for you. We'll look after them. We know their needs, even if you're, my baby boy, and we had this conversation before, and he's 8 months and he has a heart condition, several other health conditions. They're fully hands-on and they're aware of how to look after him as well and his needs. So for me, when I come, all I need to do is really just plan, my husband's happy, go for it. obviously I have work issues and all the different projects that I'm working on, but these little mental loads were taken away from me so that I'm capable of spending half an hour, 1 hour preparing for this conversation and not having to sit here talking to you, but yet worrying what's happening with my children, or what's happening with the cooking, or what's happening with that and that. My work issues I can deal with at night or whatever. So how are we as a society supporting women? Are we actually supporting them? Are we actually providing them with this opportunity? Those who don't have children and don't have the responsibilities of a family, maybe she's an introvert. Maybe she needs help with public speaking. Maybe she needs certain phrases that will prompt her. Can I provide her with these? Can I provide her with a level of self-efficacy that she needs to know that she's capable?
Was that the only issue that you identified, or was there?
No, several issues. So because it's focused on tech,
Yeah.
The other issues were, pardon me, what kind of toys are we giving girls and boys at a young age? We give boys remote control cars.
So these have genuine lasting impact.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
They do. And that's when I come back to right in the beginning of the conversation when I said I was looked at as a tomboy, because the gifts I got for my teklif when I became 9 were all Barbie dolls and just, and
you weren't having it.
Weaving stuff. And I looked and I thought, these people have gone to so much effort. And I was just ripping the wrapping paper apart, trying to find a walkie-talkie and a computer or something, because that's where my interest was. But everyone's like, here are the toys, for a girl, a Barbie doll. I know that's really cute. My daughter's really into dolls and creative stuff and arts, and that's really, that's her personality. But for me, I didn't want all of this. I wanted techie stuff. I wanted stuff I can break apart.
Do you think that things have changed? Like, this is obviously a slightly different, well, it's linked but slightly different, but I feel like today there's more of an acceptance and a tolerance that kids can have varying interests and can go in any direction. If a boy wants to play with Barbie dolls, let him.
Absolutely.
And vice versa, with girls and boy toys. But things have changed, right? Like there is more progression, but I think there still is, and like you see these arguments being played out on social media when a supermarket does something that's inappropriate in that way, or that's considered to be sexist or biased towards boys. They get called out. They get called out, right? But I think we are. I mean, again, separate conversation. Talk about how far the other side we should and need to go and are going. Yeah. But there is more of that kind of openness, right?
There is.
So you mentioned Google in a very humble and passing way that you've been invited to. Was it LA or San Francisco?
San Francisco, yeah.
So tell us more about that. And I think we've spent probably about half an hour now talking about the issues, and I think a lot of it has been skewed towards within our sort of Muslim communities in terms of how we look at things. And I think there is also a conversation to be had about the tech space generally, and your experience there. So I guess hinging off that thing that we said about not turning up to events because you don't feel welcome, you at some point in the last 4 years decided, okay, I'm gonna start turning up.
I'm literally gonna go to every event that's
and
there now.
And what was that like when you had that change of heart or mind or whatever? What happened from there?
Thanks. Yeah. I learned a lot about myself on that journey, and one of them being what you just mentioned. I realized that when I'm constantly being put in an uncomfortable position, I decide to just go right in the deep end. You know what? I'm going to make this hurt as much as possible and just make the most difficult choice so that after that, everything's easier. So not that learning how to drive a manual car is a very good comparison to this, because, it's not a very difficult thing to do. But, when I looked at my approach when I want to learn how to drive, I'm not going to go for the easy way. Like, I'm just going to go for the harder one so that everything else is easy.
It's easy. I understand. I get you. Right? I think most people do that. Like, most people will learn manual, but then get an automatic car.
That's
but
it.
It's just so that it's easy. I know
how to do the difficult thing. And so I thought, okay, look, I keep staying away from these events because I don't know how to tell them that I can't be around alcohol. I don't know how to tell them that I can't shake a man's hand. I don't know how to tell them, it's my prayer time. I need to be leaving this talk right now. And then I just thought, you know what? You're never going to be, this space will never be inclusive for people like you unless you speak up.
Yeah.
Unless you just go up to them and put yourself in that really horrible and scary place and then see what happens. What's the worst that they can say? No?
No, yeah. Literally,
No.
that is, yeah.
It's not going to, but for me, it was so much more because I was overthinking things and what they're going to think. And I'm representing Muslim women with my hijab and I'm representing my family. And people don't really think of that. It's just all in your head, really. They're just thinking, you're making a request. Can we provide her with this request? Yes or no, it can be done. And so I started, when they'd say, Hawra, why are you leaving the events early? I'd be like, I'm sorry, I cannot be around alcohol. Yeah, it's in the evening. And that also meant I was missing out on networking opportunities. But funny enough, when I mentioned that once or twice or commented on someone's Twitter, someone who was non-Muslim, and saying that, we need to provide more inclusive spaces without alcohol in our events, I'd retweet that and people were being more aware. Oh, okay, so this is a request of hers. And so when I started going to more events, they were just like, oh, Hawra, the alcohol will start, for example, as opposed to from 6 p.m. It's going to start from 8 p.m., 9 p.m. when you've had an opportunity to talk to people. And I thought, okay, you did that for me. And yeah, will that make you feel more comfortable? Yes, it will. And then the conversation started about, okay, what else can I ask for that?
You got a little bit, now I'm just going to keep going.
I'm Iraqi,
I want a Ferrari.
Whatever you can provide, I'm happy. So what I listed, what were the essentials? When I'm asking to pray, okay, so fine, yeah, leave the talk when it's prayer time. But where would you like to pray? And I think, okay, well, I'll pray in a corner. And they'd notice once or twice, and then they're like, would it help if we provided you with a small room, if we opened a small room for you at prayer time? And I thought, yeah, that would be amazing. That little prayer room then turned from a men's and women's room to me being more comfortable and saying, can we have separate prayer rooms? And it was a yes. And I realized that I was the one saying no to myself before anyone else did.
Yeah.
And then the next event I went to, this is what we spoke about earlier about, the level of inclusion. It was, okay, I walk into the room and they've put the qibla for me, and they've put a piece of paper and they've stuck it on the table so that it doesn't move around with the arrow towards the qibla, and they've used their own Google Qibla Finder app, which is a brilliant web app
Shout
to
out
use.
to Google for that.
So, shout out to a Muslim who worked at Google and decided, I'm going to use my platform, my technical abilities and the place I'm in to make a difference to my own community, right? Shout out to that person, whoever they are, kudos to them, because that's the most reliable Qibla app that I've used.
It's stunning,
right?
to be honest. I love it. Yeah.
Wherever you are in the world, open your Safari or Google Chrome, your web browser, wherever you're at, and then it'll just pick it up and show you.
Surprised you said Safari before you said Google Chrome.
I
You're meant
use
to be
an
like a
iPhone.
Google ambassador here, aren't you? Oh, and you got an iPhone as well. Brilliant.
Google Chrome's there. I just
yeah, sure it is.
Safari. So yeah, that changed to then having the Qibla, and then the next time the Salat timings were there as well. I thought, oh wow, you've literally, and they've printed it on a cool Google paper as well, going with the theme of the event, the whole design.
So all of this experience was as your time with Google.
With Google, yeah.
Okay.
As so what they call the Google developer ecosystem. As kind of leaders, let's say in your own society, you can volunteer to work with them.
Okay.
So you're not working at Google, you're working with Google to work on like inclusion, diversity, taking their tech events to your own areas of the world, because you're the experts of that society. Because
you get you have the local knowledge, so you can.
Absolutely.
But I find it really interesting that going from them not catering to your needs to then going above and beyond, and that was only possible through you asking.
Yeah.
Like literally all you had to do was say, I need a prayer space. And then next thing you know, you've got the Qibla and you've got prayer times.
Absolutely. And they were asking other people, other Muslims who work with them. So how can I make this person be more comfortable, or I was just being very British, like very passive through tweets.
Not even retweeting, just liking a tweet.
Yeah, like,
that's enough. They'll get the message.
Or a yes with like yes. So they get it, because a few gentlemen came up to me in some events and they're like, I saw that tweet and now I know that when I come to greet you, I'll put my hand on my chest as a sign, as opposed to putting my hand out. And you're like, that tweet worked. Someone saw it.
But it's interesting, because a handshake is like the perpetual struggle of the Muslim in business.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's only when when someone has taken the step of being upfront and honest and just saying, look, I'm sorry, I don't do this, that person will know and understand, or that company will then know that this is a thing. And then it's no longer an issue.
And then you've saved so many other Muslims from having to go through that. However, because not all Muslims believe in
this is the other thing, right?
Yeah. And they think, you know what, this is
but
very normal
I think we're progressing as a society generally, because there is that understanding that no two people are the same.
Absolutely.
So even when it comes to, for example, going to a pub or being around alcohol, some people don't want to be around alcohol. Some people are perfectly okay with it as long as they're not drinking. Yeah. Some people will also drink as Muslims, and like that can be confusing, I feel, at the same time.
Exactly what I was just going to say. Yeah.
But that it's okay, because like I've been in situations as well where someone will be like, oh, but that guy does X, Y, Z. I'd be like, okay, cool, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I have my own, this is my personal set of rules, or my personal, how I live my life. And that's just how I do things. So even like my experience, so I only worked for a year post-university at like a company, and I never went to the pub. Thursday evening is like the pub socializing, whatever. Yeah. Never went. And like they would ask initially, like, oh, are you coming? And then firstly it was like,
you'd make random excuses.
I have to go home. My wife, I don't know. I just make something up. And then once I got confident enough that these guys know me and I can be honest with them, I'm like, look, I don't go to pubs. Sorry. So like, that's not happening. And what's interesting is I had the same thing where there was once an offer which I said no to because I thought it's just too long for these guys. We had a canteen downstairs. They're like, let's have a soft drink downstairs with you, and then we can go. And then they were like, maybe you can join. I was like, no, I'm not going to join you. But I was like, I'm not going to hold you guys back either. It's cool. I appreciate it.
You can do that.
But go forth and drink, have your fun.
Yeah, you need to.
But again, for me, I found that like people are always tolerant and understanding. But you just have to be clear and coherent in what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Your requests need to make sense, and they need to be reasonable.
Yeah.
You can't say, for example, oh, can you stop the whole talk for 10 minutes so I can go pray? You just want a little space so you can slip off. You can't expect them to
stop
to stop everything for you. But that's really cool.
Can I add to what you just said?
Please feel free.
Okay? So with regards to being clear and coherent, sometimes you'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't shake your hands, this is how I show my respect and all of that. And I've had situations where they'd come in for a hug. No. And I'm just like, this is worse. I wish I'd shook your hand. This is worse.
I would have taken a handshake.
Because it's just like, because my clarity was, I can't shake your hand. And then I was like, okay, I need to be even more clear. Like, you cannot touch me.
But it's also how do you like get across an entire ideology within 2 seconds?
Probably half a second.
Yeah. And you turned up mumbling. I was that's literally it. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, what was that? Or they'd have their hand out and you're just like, it's there, the words are there. So sometimes you can get caught off guard and you're just like, oh my God, what did I just say? And it was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You just want to say, I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry, I don't shake hands.
I started repeating the phrase to myself, like constantly, Hawra, you've got this, like you can say it, you've done it hundreds of times before, and they've all been very understanding. And what started happening was that they take it back to their companies. And so I realized that certain companies that I'd work with or meet employees from, the men would have their hands by their side or on their chest because they've been trained, where some of them would say, as you said earlier, oh, but this such and such woman shook my hand. And you're just like, okay, how do I explain this? She was also a Muslim woman. She was also a visibly Muslim woman, but she couldn't say that. And I'd be like, okay, how about let's find a solution. When it's a Muslim woman who you're talking to, a visibly Muslim woman, wait for her to put her hand out, right? And that will make things easier for you. Don't put your hand out where she's feeling awkward and she cannot say no. Some cultures, the word no is very difficult to pronounce, as opposed to the European culture where it's very direct and easy to say it. So wait for her to put her hands out if that's the situation. You know, at least you know that then she's comfortable shaking your hand. And please don't go in for a hug and a kiss because that's just making it worse.
I feel like we could do a whole podcast just on handshaking and the struggles.
Yeah, everyone goes through it.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult thing. And the drinking part as well. When I'd go to events, you know, get invited around Europe or anywhere around the world to speak, the night before the event, so they'd make sure your ticket is booked for the day before the event so that you're comfortable. The night before the event, they have speakers dinner where sometimes you're speaking alongside very distinguished speakers, yet you haven't had the time to meet them. So this is an opportunity for you. And again, just like you said, I'd make excuses. Oh, I'm really tired. And I'd be really worried because I wanted to be there. I wanted to meet such and such person. I really wanted to talk to them until I was like, listen, I'm going to have to approach this the same way I do everything else. And so what they started doing was speakers dinner would start for the first hour and a half without alcohol. And then after that, they'd know that, you know, they'd kind of show me that the alcohol's coming, and show me the door. The alcohol's coming, and you know, I'd have sometimes 12, 13 people waiting for me to go away, but waiting for me to, you know, enjoy my dinner with them. And then that's it. I say goodbye, I'm gonna leave, and then they enjoy the alcohol.
Awesome.
So
that's really nice.
everyone kind of, it's like a win-win situation, because I get to talk to them and they get to enjoy the alcohol later.
And so I think, you know, now, what have you, because you mentioned with the Google stuff that you're kind of working within communities and you have the community expertise. So what have you been doing, I guess, with Google and specifically with Muslim women in Najaf and like empowerment? And I guess, you know, it's quite a nice sort of circle that you've gone to, because you started off in your kind of mid to late teens, if I've got the timeline in my head correct, with no qualifications or experience teaching women, and now you're kind of degree, masters, PGC, working on a PhD, PGC, working on a PhD now as well. Yeah. And back working with communities in Najaf. It must be a very different experience for you and for them.
Completely. I feel like with that, I showed the few people who really had no confidence in me that I'm still the same person. My heart is still, you know, in the same place. I still want to contribute. And it didn't make a difference whether I had a degree or not. I still have that same love of serving the community in my own way, which is the tech world. Obviously, now I have more knowledge to share. Now I am capable of completely ignoring people like that because they don't have a say in my life and they don't exist. Whereas many years ago, it was up to them to decide to give me a job or not. Yeah. So it's really funny, kind of, it feels good a few years down, you know, when you, it's a part of the ego where you're just like, yeah, okay, you don't exist in my life anymore. I've moved on. But yeah, going back to Google. So with, you know, coming and going back to Najaf, Iraq, which we both know is a very conservative city as well. I was already part of the Google community and working with running what they call a GDG, a Google Developer Group in Oxford, and just helping out different cities. I took advantage of the couple of trips that I was in San Francisco, where it was a huge Google developer event, and I asked, who's the head of this whole community? Who runs the GDG chapters around the world? And they're like, okay, so this is the program manager. She will be here at, I don't know, like 2 or 3 p.m. in this huge event that's outdoors, San Francisco heat, in the summer. And I thought, we're getting Google in Najaf. And Najaf will be on the map. You've got like 850 chapters around the world, so 850 something cities there. And why is Najaf not one of these? Well, you know, we've got amazing people there. Why is Iraq not being represented? What's happening? So there was one in Baghdad, but we know that they're two completely different cultures between Baghdad and Najaf, and that was the only city that was being represented. And I thought, we've got 18 cities in Iraq. Why isn't one of them being represented? Why isn't another one being represented? So I took pictures of the amount of heat I took on that day, standing outdoors waiting for that woman, where you know, I got heat stroke and I was dehydrated, and they took me to first aid in that event.
That bad?
It was bad. I had an extremely bad rash where my hands were swollen up to here.
Wow.
And I was like, listen, I'm doing this for Najaf. Like, I'm going proper
Doing this for
extreme.
Najaf. Yeah.
I managed to have a conversation with that program leader at Google. And I said, listen, this is a city. This is the situation for women there. We have brilliant talent. Their voices are not being heard, right? And maybe if we took these events and got Google represented there, that would be good for Google, because, you know, you're tapping into a huge pool of talent that's never been recognized before. And people then feel comfortable with the name and brand of Google to kind of support, you know, the local community. And that worked. Lots of admin work, but alhamdulillah, you know, established a brilliant group of women over there.
Amazing.
Who were running events. And, you know, we've seen year upon year in the past 3 years approximately, the number of women who are coming to these events, the number of women who are contributing, who are speaking, who are learning, who are running workshops. Sometimes we have to ask them to bring their fathers and their husbands and their brothers with them, even if they're not in tech, just so that they feel like they're in a safe space and they're able to, you know, be around.
So I guess it's still working with the kind of cultural.
You still have to, yeah. You still have to keep
restrictions,
the culture.
let's say, yeah.
Yeah, they are restrictions, but you have to keep it in mind, and you can't just be like, "Oh, we're here to save you." Yeah, right. We're progressive.
Yeah.
I had some people from other cities come. You know, in Najaf, you're usually wearing a full abaya.
Yeah.
Right. So when we had the opening event in 2018, we had the Google brand, and that's one of the photos. I don't think I've put it on my Instagram, but I'm in my full abaya. I'm wearing the green shawl and pointing at the Google Najaf brand. And we had some people from other cities who were progressive thinking, like software engineers, and they'd be like, "Oh, your brand doesn't work with the Google theme." So I said to him, "What do you mean the Google theme?" "Yes, the Google theme is progressive. Software engineers should be out there, and you and your abayas and the way you're dressed, what is this backward thinking of yours, and, you know, backward dressing of yours?" So there wasn't only external kind of issues to deal with. There were internal issues where other people looked and thought, you know what, you should be sticking to your abayas and sitting at home and being quiet. Stop trying to make this so
it's a perpetual struggle, I think. And I think the last thing I wanted to kind of, obviously, unless there's anything else you wanna chuck in, but I think the last thing I thought would be good to ask you and to kind of have you state the case for is why we need more women, but also more Muslim women in tech. Because you've spoken about the struggles and the journey that you've been on, and you haven't said it. I've said it once, but I'm going to say it again. I think you're most definitely trailblazing in this space in terms of actively, as you said, putting yourself in difficult positions for your own personal development and growth. But I think also that opens doors for others. And as I said, you know, one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is that there might be someone listening to this who has come across you or just listens to the podcast and has always had an interest or a passion that might not sit in line with their own cultural sensitivities or their parents or their communities or societies or whatever else. But the reality is that it is possible to pursue your passion, and it just needs a bit of kind of determination. And so if, for argument's sake, someone is keen on tech,
right?
Why should they embark on a journey like yours?
Absolutely, yeah, you put that beautifully. So I always say, if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? So we have a generation of youth and girls growing up, and a lot of them will be interested in how, you know, what you brought up earlier, the topic of gaming. You know, now it's a lot of girls are interested in gaming. Maybe they will take that interest forward and want to know how to create games. Maybe girls are, you know, working with computers and creating websites, and they want to know how to take that forward. But then when they look at the world of tech, are they being represented? Do they have someone who they can look up to and say, well, you know, she did it, so can I? We usually need that. We need someone who looks like me. It's not enough for me to look at a woman being in tech. I need to look at a Muslim woman, for me personally, I'm talking about my own personal, I need to look at a visibly Muslim woman. I need to look at one who is a mother, one who is a wife, one who comes from a conservative family, one who comes from all of these, like putting all of these factors together.
Yeah.
And then saying, you know what, yeah, if she can do it, so can I. Right? And so that's what I kind of strive for. That I come from so many different backgrounds, yet I've put them together, and you know, I'm still practicing my religion in the way that I feel is suitable for me and works for me. And I want other girls and other women to feel like they also have a place in tech. So many women I know who are software engineers, they're doing such brilliant work. As I said earlier, they are 10 times a better programmer than I would ever be. Yet they feel like, you know, I'm a mum, and if I kind of, you know, if I'm a mum, therefore I cannot be going and speaking at events. I cannot go and do this. Makes sense, you know, if you want to feel like as a mother I should be at home, I should be looking after my kids. I'm not saying, oh, go out there and make yourself extremely uncomfortable and, you know, leave your children. But if that's what you want, then there really shouldn't be anything holding you back, because I think once you just ask for what you need to feel included, there is a place for you, and everyone wants to feel like they belong, right? And so I feel like everyone does belong in tech. As you said, for argument's sake, you do have a place, so long as you know what you want, kind of have a level of self-awareness, and look at for people who've done this before you. If they haven't, why not start this journey? And just start with that drive. If you've got the drive for it, go for it. There's no need to be holding ourselves back, let alone. People will always talk. Sometimes it's like, oh, what will people say? As I said earlier, I was told, you know, why don't you go and teach Quran? Why don't you go and teach religion? But I'm not a specialist in Quran and religion.
Yeah.
Just because I'm from a conservative family doesn't mean I need to be teaching this stuff. You know, there are amazing people who are professional who are teaching this stuff. My field is tech. That's what I want to be teaching people. I just think...
I think one thing that you mentioned that's important is that, you know, if you haven't gone down this route, you might not necessarily want to. Yeah. I don't think, you know, I think sometimes it comes across like people are saying, oh, we have to be out there, we have to be, you know, make a space for ourselves, make a name for ourselves. Yeah. But not everybody necessarily wants that. But I think a lot of people, like you said, and you've been through the journey yourself, where you've wanted something but held yourself back because of what will people say, how will I do this, what will the community say, what will how will they treat me, and I'm the only visibly Muslim woman in a space where there's not Muslims, there's not women, and there's definitely not the two together. As I said, I think it genuinely is inspirational to an extent, but it's something that there is, you know, you need the appetite and the hunger for. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm so for it. If you decide, you know, I just want to stay at home, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to be, well, that's your choice. But my conversation is definitely for those who for those who do choose to stay at home and not kind of pursue this forward publicly. I just think just have that confidence in yourself that this is really what you want, and stick with it. But if you feel like you have that hunger and drive, don't hold yourself back. It's a shame, because so many people could learn from you and be inspired by your journey.
I haven't asked your permission for this, but
go ahead.
You might be a bit worried now. No, but you know, I'll put your maybe your Twitter handle or whatever in the description, and I think if people are interested in getting involved, or just reaching out or getting some advice or whatever it might be,
absolutely,
would you be okay with that?
Absolutely, I get that a lot. A lot of women.
Cool. I was going to say, I think that's the main thing, and you're right. Like you mentioned, all the different things that make you as an individual unique, your religious, cultural background and baggage, let's say, that you bring to the table. And I think, you know, even myself, when I was kind of growing up and thinking about what I want to do, what I want to get into, you always look for someone that's close to you. So you look for, like, you know, a particular person. So I was always interested in the media. So I look at media personalities and be like, oh, this guy's like me. But then I'm like, oh no, but he doesn't seem
completely like me.
It's not like he's too liberal, or he's this or he's that. And you're never going to find anyone that has the same journey as yourself. But I think it's always inspirational and motivational when you see people who have aspects of your upbringing, background, baggage, let's say, because you're like, okay, they managed to navigate that, I probably can as well. But yeah, no, again, I just wanted to thank you for sharing so much from a personal perspective and a work perspective. And genuinely, it like I said halfway through the podcast, you know, we always look at others and think, oh my God, they're doing so much. You are genuinely doing so much. No, it's amazing. I think, you know, there's you've had to navigate a lot in all of that.
Absolutely.
But you know, alhamdulillah, I think you're doing a fantastic job of it.
I try. So
hopefully you can keep this up, and then I mean, there's 16 cities left in Iraq that need GDG groups set up, right?
Yeah, I've been helping people kind of set it up, just showing them how to get things done. But there's a lot of admin and internal stuff that
I can imagine
holds them back. But I try and give as much as I can to people. And as I said earlier, whoever would like to reach out, I get a lot of people, a lot of mothers who are doing PhDs, who want to do a PhD, who reach out and say, can I do it? You know, can I do a PhD with a child? It's what I've always wanted to do.
Do you have like a set template response?
No, yes. I am very yes, you can. But no, I definitely respond to every single message based on the information that they give me, and I'm happy to help.
Alhamdulillah, that's good. Alhamdulillah. Well, thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.